Breaking news to report, the country's longest-serving Senate leader in history says he's done. Kentucky Republican Senator Mitch McConnell is stepping down. Hunter Biden is set to testify before House committees today in a closed-door deposition. Did the president have a role in his son's business dealings? Should bump stocks be banned? These devices allow semi-automatic firearms to fire like machine guns. The U.S. Supreme Court is reconsidering if federal bans should be reversed. Homes destroyed, hundreds of thousands of acres burned, a nuclear facility shut down. Wildfires are wreaking havoc in the Texas Panhandle. Senator Bernie Sanders discusses America's retirement crisis. The number of seniors in our country at the poverty rate is among the highest of all developed nations. Americans are struggling to buy homes as annual home prices rise again in December, growing from 6.6% on a yearly basis. Bankrate's senior economic analyst tells us more about Americans struggling to afford a house. Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Jack Bradley. We got some breaking news to tell you about. Mitch McConnell will step down as the Senate's Republican leader in November, ending a record run in the powerful post. He's the longest-serving Senate leader in U.S. history. In announcing his decision earlier today, McConnell, who celebrated his birthday just last week, told his Senate colleagues he didn't anticipate having to tell them so soon.
I turned 82 last week. The end of my contributions are closer than I'd prefer.
He began his Senate career in 1985. McConnell is an ardent supporter of how President Ronald Reagan perceived America's role around the globe. Although facing opposition, including from Republican Party leader Donald Trump, McConnell secured enough Senate votes for the pending $60 billion aid package for Ukraine. The relationship between him and Trump has soured since McConnell blames Trump for instigating what happened at the Capitol on January 6th. He has also not endorsed Trump for president. McConnell will serve out his Senate term, which ends in 2027. As questions over his age and ability to govern into the 2024 election continue, President Biden is receiving his annual physical today. Biden is at the Walter Reed Army Hospital for his annual health checkup. During the president's exam last year, the doctor reported that he was a healthy, vigorous 80-year-old male who was fit for duty. If he wins re-election, Biden will be 82 at the start of his second term and 86 by the time it's complete. Polling is showing that a lot of voters, including many Democrats, think Biden is too old to run for office. His likely opponent this November, 77-year-old former President Donald Trump, doesn't say Biden's too old, but rather incompetent. While the president is having his health check done, his son, Hunter, appeared before Congress today to testify in the impeachment inquiry against his father. NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has the latest on the probe.
Today around 10 a.m., Hunter Biden, the president's son, appeared at the O'Neill House Office building to testify before the House Oversight and Judiciary Committee. This deposition is part of the impeachment inquiry against President Joe Biden. Let's hear what James Comer, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, had to say.
Our committees have unearthed substantial evidence of President Biden and his family's corruption. The Bidens created 20 shell companies.
It's also important to note that Democrats have, throughout the process, said that the impeachment inquiry is a political sham. Specifically after the indictment of Alexander Smirnov, longtime FBI informant, who was again indicted earlier this month for lying to the FBI specifically about information he provided regarding Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's business dealings. Now, I spoke with a Democratic Congressman, Greg Casar, a freshman in the Oversight Committee, and he had strong language against his Republican counterparts for continuing this impeachment inquiry. Let's listen what Congressman Greg Casar had to say.
I think almost any American would say, just stop embarrassing yourself, stop shaming yourself this way. And they just seem to be gluttons for punishment. They're back at it again, and I think they're just going to embarrass themselves again today.
Then I also spoke with Congresswoman Nancy Mace, the Republican from South Carolina, and she herself had very strong language against her Democrats for not wanting to pursue the impeachment inquiry. Let's listen to what Congresswoman Nancy Mace had to say.
Of course, that's bullshit, because we all know what the FBI said about this witness. They said that this witness was trustworthy and credible. They paid this witness 6 figures. So is the FBI that incompetent to pay this guy hundreds of thousands of dollars for him not to be credible, for him not to be trustworthy?
So, of course, Hunter Biden is the most prominent figure to be deposed by the House Oversight Committee so far, after James Biden, the president's younger brother, was deposed last Wednesday. The chairman of the Oversight Committee, James Comer, has stated that Hunter Biden will not be the last person to be interviewed in this investigation.
Former President Trump inched closer to securing the Republican Party nomination for president. Let's take a look at the latest results from the Michigan primaries. Former President Trump wins the Michigan Republican primary with 68.2% of the vote, just over 756,000 votes, earning him 9 delegates. Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley coming in second with 26.5%, a little over 294,000 votes, earning her 2 delegates. On the Democratic side, President Biden won with over 618,000 votes. That's 81.1% of the vote. The victory gives Biden 109 delegates. A little over 100,000 voters chose uncommitted as a protest of Biden's handling of the war in Gaza. Now that accounted for 13.2% of the vote. A series of wildfires are sweeping across the Texas Panhandle early today, prompting evacuations. The fires also cut off power to thousands, and it's forcing the shutdown of a nuclear weapons facility. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the fires, which have destroyed an unknown number of homes and structures.
Authorities say strong winds, dry grass, and unseasonably warm temperatures have fed the wildfires. Greenville, Texas Fire and Rescue shared this harrowing video. An emergency team driving into a hellish inferno that most would flee from. Flames line the roadside, and black smoke billows across the scorched landscape. Here the fires can be seen by air, from a plane arriving in Amarillo. The blue lights of Elk City Fire and EMS can be seen flashing as they travel along a road dotted with orange fires. Governor Greg Abbott issued a disaster declaration for 60 counties as the largest blaze, the Smokehouse Creek Fire, burned nearly 400 square miles. So far, more than 370,000 acres have been burned by the fires, according to the state's Forest Service. The main facility that assembles and disassembles America's nuclear arsenal, Pantex, had to shut down its operations Tuesday night. The plant posted on X on Wednesday that it had resumed operations. A wildfire crossed from Texas into Oklahoma, where it prompted evacuations on Tuesday. Oklahoma resident David Morris says they have been in a tornado zone and a fire zone for the last few years.
You know, I'd call it climate change and global warming, but I'm not woke. It happens every year about this time.
The National Weather Service has issued red flag warnings and fire danger alerts for several other states through the midsection of the country. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
A Georgia food operation got smoked by Georgia law enforcement officers. See, they thought they were raiding an illegal food manufacturing plant in Pierce County. Turns out to be a marijuana grow operation. Sheriff's deputies found more than $20 million worth of cannabis plants inside the facility. 4 Chinese nationals were arrested. One of them entered the U.S. illegally and has been detained by immigration enforcement agents. The suspects face felony charges for marijuana manufacturing and possession of marijuana. All 4 have been denied bond. Illegal marijuana farms operated by Chinese nationals with possible links to the Chinese regime are popping up across the country. Now, they're often part of a larger criminal network involving money laundering, human trafficking, and forced labor. 50 members of Congress have asked the Justice Department for a briefing on the matter. President Biden and Trump are heading to the southern border tomorrow. Biden says Congress needs to act to secure the southern border. Meanwhile, Trump says he would issue mass deportations if reelected. I spoke to John Fabricatori, a former ICE field officer, to discuss the feasibility of mass deportations of illegal immigrants.
This administration, number one, the day that they came into office, started to get rid of a lot of the immigration law. So they started putting out some priorities. This president wanted a 100-day moratorium on deportations. That was a draw for a lot of people that wanted to come here. They saw that this administration was going to treat them a lot better in allowing them to enter this country, especially illegally.
Now, Trump said if elected, he will issue a mass deportation.
Yes.
What would that look like?
So a mass deportation, you'd really have to identify who's in the country illegally first, and then start working on actually deporting those people. So they would have to see an immigration judge. There has to be a process there in order to remove them, but it actually can be done. We do have the aperture, and we have the process in place under the Immigration Nationality Act to actually remove the people that are here illegally.
It'd have to be done all locally, though, right?
But potentially. So under the immigration law, there's a thing called 287G, in which ICE can actually deputize local law enforcement to have them help with immigration. So you actually deputize local law enforcement and kind of make them immigration agents, and they could actually help in that process.
What's the current state of deportations now?
It's actually very low. So under this administration, it's dropped dramatically. So under Obama, there was about 400,000 deportations a year. Under Trump, about 300,000. With this administration, under 100,000 a year.
That's surprising because we're seeing more people crossing illegally. Are we likely to see a mass deportation, if Trump is elected? And where are they mostly coming from?
So they're coming from all over. So when I worked for ICE, we'd see a lot actually coming up from Mexico and South America. That's not the case now. I've been to the border 8 times since I've retired, and I'm seeing people from all over Africa. I'm seeing people from China. I'm seeing people from countries that I never dealt with as an ICE officer. So we're seeing more come from around the world than we're actually seeing come from South America. I was down in Lukeville, Arizona, and I was running into people from Senegal, from Ghana, from Mauritania. Those are countries that I didn't normally see when I worked for ICE, and we're seeing much more of them now.
Why is that?
Well, because of the draw. They're hearing how easy it is to come into the United States, and they believe that they can come here for economic benefits. So a lot of people are claiming asylum, but they're not asylum eligible. They're coming into this country because they want to earn more money. But really, what jobs are there for them right now? I mean, the people that are coming in are not coming in with a high education. Many of the people are coming from countries in which they may only have an elementary education. What jobs are they coming in to do? It's very difficult, and they're coming in here believing they can make $100,000 a year, they're going to have a nice place to live, when our own citizens are having a hard time finding jobs and being able to afford their mortgage and afford sending their kids to school. And we're just adding millions of more people that don't have the job skills necessary, but they're coming in demanding jobs.
John Fabricatori, retired ICE field officer and director. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate being on the show.
The Supreme Court today hears a major gun rights case. It involves a Trump-era ban on rifles that turn into something like machine guns. Now, we turn now to our legal correspondent, Arlene Richards, for more. Arlene, how did this case get to the Supreme Court in the first place?
Well, it started in 2017 when a gunman used semi-automatic rifles equipped with bump stock devices to kill 60 people and injure 500 others. Now, a bump stock is an attachment that transforms a semi-automatic rifle into a weapon that can discharge hundreds of rounds per minute with one movement by the shooter. The ATF, or Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, then issued a rule in 2018 that bump stocks are machine guns. Now, under the rule, anyone who owned or possessed a bump stock had to destroy them or turn them over to an ATF office. The plaintiff in this case, Michael Cargill, who is the owner of a gun store in Austin, surrendered several bump stocks he had in his store. He then went to the court seeking to have the rule invalidated, and so here we are.
Now, with the Supreme Court, what question are they trying to answer, and what were some of the court's concerns here?
Well, the question presented is whether a rifle equipped with a bump stock is a machine gun, which is generally prohibited under federal law. Now, several conservative justices indicated their concern with the federal ban on bump stocks. Justice Brett Kavanaugh said he was worried about Americans being prosecuted under a ban they aren't aware of. And Justice Amy Coney Barrett questioned why the issue wouldn't be handled by Congress. Now, this was a theme that several justices returned to repeatedly today, and I think it's part of a push by the court's conservatives to limit the power of federal agencies in recent years. On the other hand, the liberal justices focused on the idea that rifles equipped with bump stocks effectively work like machine guns and can do similar damage if misused. Justice Elena Kagan said the law was written so that small adjustments of a weapon would not be allowed as exceptions to it. So some opposing concerns there, and we'll have to see what they decide. Jack?
Certainly a lot to watch for there. Arlene, thank you. America's senior poverty rate is at an estimated 23%. Now, this number is according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. This is among the highest in the developed world, higher than Denmark, France, the United Kingdom, Scandinavia, Italy, and even Kazakhstan. Now, Senator Bernie Sanders at a hearing Wednesday blames billionaires for not paying enough. The Heritage Foundation's Rachel Chrysler blames union leaders.
Unions took advantage of preferential rules that allowed them to increase benefits without requiring higher contributions to fund those benefits. Defined benefit and defined contribution plans can provide secure retirement. But when not managed properly, defined benefit plans can end up like Ponzi schemes. That's what's happened with Social Security and multi-employer or union pensions. The last thing that Americans need is for lawmakers to try to put more of their retirement savings into accounts that they neither own nor control, and which are managed by groups of people who've repeatedly put their own personal incentives above workers.
Chrysler says union leaders essentially mismanaged the plans. Congress bailed out 15% of them with taxpayer money, which is approximately $700 billion, leaving 10 million union workers who in failing plans who weren't blessed by bailouts. Chrysler suggests enforcing rules on these funds. Non-union pension rules currently don't apply to union pension rules. Right now, North Korea's factories are producing weapons and ammunition for Russia. Now, according to South Korea's defense minister, they're operating at full capacity. The news comes as last week marks the 2 years since the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. North Korea is arming Russia with stockpiles of artillery shells, and they're giving Russia millions of them. In return, Russia is shipping them mostly food and other necessities. And the U.S. State Department has backed this up in a fact sheet released last Friday. They say North Korea has delivered over 10,000 containers of munitions or related materials to Russia since September. All of these shipments come as Russia is in need of supplies and ammunition after suffering losses over the last 2 years of war. Next week, the U.S. and South Korea will kick off an 11-day military drill on the Korean Peninsula, responding to escalating tensions as North Korea steps back from peace talks with South Korea and remilitarized its border. Any U.S. Navy aircraft carriers that will be a part of those military exercises with South Korea will be using new technology to launch fighter jets from the flight deck. Now, the advanced process will allow for smoother flight operations and save the Navy some money here.
Fire in 3, 2, 1, fire.
So you watch as these car-like structures are launched off the deck of the John F. Kennedy using electromagnetic launch systems. It involves using electromagnetic energy to launch jet fighters from the decks of aircraft carriers. This system will replace the current steam catapult system that the Navy uses. The process uses less energy and decreases the wear and tear on the vessel. It's currently in use in the Navy's Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. And when we come back, Americans are struggling to buy homes. Annual home prices rise again in December, growing 6.6% on a yearly basis. Bankrate's senior economic analyst tells us more about Americans struggling to afford a house. Meanwhile, Chrysler recalls more than 330,000 Jeep Grand Cherokees due to a steering wheel issue. The automaker says the problem could cause drivers to lose control of their vehicles. That and more after the break.
was Monday and today is Thursday. I've had 2 surgeries and am doing fantastic.
Television and other streaming platforms.
Welcome back. Chrysler is recalling more than 330,000 Jeep Grand Cherokees due to a steering wheel issue that may cause drivers to lose control of their vehicles. The recall includes 2022 and 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee vehicles and 2021, 22, and 23 Jeep Grand Cherokee L models. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration said that it had received Chrysler's recall notification in a letter posted Tuesday. The automaker says that the upper control arm ball joint and steering knuckle may separate and cause the wheel to fall outward. The issue could result in losing control of the vehicle and increasing the risk of a crash. Individuals with impacted vehicles will be able to go to dealers to have the upper control arm pinch bolts replaced free of charge. The Federal Housing Agency Finance Agency said that Tuesday the annual home prices rose again in December, growing more than 6.5% on a yearly basis. The fourth quarter of 2023 also saw 30-year fixed-rate mortgages reach an average of nearly 8%. NTD's Andrew Thomas spoke with Bankrate's senior economic analyst to learn more about Americans struggling to afford a house.
Once a symbol of the American dream, owning a home today seems out of reach for most. According to a recent survey from Bankrate, more than half of Americans say they can't afford one. Respondents said high cost of living and income are the main obstacles between them and home ownership.
What is the current state of the overall housing market right now?
Affording a home purchase is a very difficult hill to climb for many Americans right now. This is a direct result of the steady rise in mortgage rates that we've seen in recent years that occurred as the Federal Reserve raised interest rates in response to the worst inflation in a generation.
But Hamrick says potential home buyers aren't as pessimistic as they were last fall.
And I think that's due in part to the fact that mortgage rates have come down off of their peak. In October, the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage was above 8%. It moved into the high 6% range and recently has spiked a little bit back to about 7.13%. That's according to our weekly survey at Bankrate.
The Federal Reserve doesn't set mortgage rates, but the actions the central bank takes in the coming months will have an impact on home affordability.
What can we expect in the near future for the housing market?
It is expected that the Fed will begin to cut interest rates in the second half of this year. And with that, we do expect to see some easing of mortgage interest rates, possibly into the low 6% range or the high 5% range compared to the recent just above 7%.
18% told Bankrate that they have too much credit card debt to be able to afford a home. 10% said student loan debt is their main obstacle.
The other thing is one wants to have a high credit score to qualify for the lowest possible mortgage rate. And that is also consistent with the idea of shopping around for the best rate, not just to take the first one that comes along or perhaps one that a realtor will point you to.
20% of respondents told Bankrate that they will never be able to save enough to buy a home. 30% expect it will be at least 5 years until they can afford a house. 10% think it will be at least a decade. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A new online tax filing service from the IRS is up and running on a limited basis. The IRS launched Direct File, its online filing service, on Tuesday. It allows for filers who have certain types of income like employer wages, Social Security, and unemployment benefits. The IRS is rolling out the service slowly. So far, only 12 states are part of the testing phase. Currently, 1,200 people are registered to use the free filing portal. The tax agency plans to gradually open Direct File to all eligible taxpayers within the coming weeks. Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Jack Bradley. We'll have more stories from the U.S. and around the world. Join Tiffany Meyer for the NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific.